Alright, time for another video. We're still in the section of C++ functions. Last time we left off, we were dealing with overloading functions, which I got a little stuck on. I don't think it's so much the overloading functions that I so much got stuck on. It was something that was said, or some of the content that was in one of the sources I used that I didn't fully understand, um, which is fine. It's not so much about understanding their content as much as what it is about understanding C++ altogether. So, anyways, so let's continue where we left off from the last video. Switch this over here. If it's the first time you're seeing one of my videos, I've gotten W3 Schools on the right side, VS Code on the left side. Again, we left off at, and we're still in C++ functions, and this is where we ended our last video. So let's pick up there and continue moving forward. By the way, if you have any questions, comments, corrections you want to mention and stuff that I've about something I've said, it's perfectly fine. Leave them in the comments. If you like these videos, hit the like button. Um, this is all about my journey in learning C++. It has nothing to do with me teaching anybody. Maybe a little bit of inspiration, but it's pretty much about it. I'm just kind of sharing how I am going about learning C++ code to write programs, whether it be for games or anything else that I need a program for. So anyway, C++ variable scope. That is our next section to discover things about. Now that you understand how functions work, it is important to learn how variables act inside and outside of functions. In C++, variables are only accessed inside the region they are created. This is called scope. Okay, and we got, it looks like what's called a local scope. A variable created inside a function belongs to the local scope of that function and can only be used inside that function. And then they got an example here. So let's go ahead and clear out all this code right here. Probably won't be using any of it. And all this right here. So we can get this example written in here. So the first thing that they got here is a void function with a variable name of my function. It doesn't look like we're going to have any parameters for this, so as this is just an example, they do have a comment here. I'm going to go ahead and add local variable that belongs to my function. And then the variable inside the function, integer x is 5. Got space there, and then I got another comment here, print the variable x. So then we're going to have a standard output of x. And down here in the main, we're just basically going to call this function my function with no argument. Pretty self-explanatory right here as far as what the code's going to do. It's not so much about what the code is going to do, it's about understanding local variables, as that's what the title is right here. So apparently this is what is known as a local variable because it sits inside this function, which means it can only be used inside this function. Now, don't misunderstand that for the idea that a value cannot be moved around. This is the variable right here. It stays inside this function. This is the statement for this variable right here, which stays inside this function. So x in this function right here stays in this. The variable can be changed. The variable can move outside the function, depends on the function and the program or whatnot, the code you write. But yes, when We are referring to x inside this function right here. It is this x, and if there was an x down here, it would not be referring to the variable down here, x, just right here. So local indicates that a local variable, when it's created like this, is only going to belong to this function right here. But yes, there is nothing to really print out here. If I run the code, yes, we're just going to get 5. It's a simple program that has no real complications to it whatsoever. A local variable cannot be used outside the function it belongs to, as we just discussed. If you try to access it outside the function, an error will occur. Okay, so they have another example here where they literally take, we're going to go ahead and remove this right here because it's no longer in this example. We're going to literally take this right here part and move it to here and get rid of, oh, no, we're not going to get rid of that. Let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So there's this function right here with x. We got the function call right there. We got a comment right here, print the variable x in the main function. And as you can see, we already have a kind of a squiggly line underneath the x right here, indicating a problem. So we have x up here. We have no argument, no parameter for the function. We cannot pull this x, or the value of this x, to here from this function. So since it's in this function, it stays in this function. We try to print it up down here. The compiler is going to see this and going to be like, you don't have a variable x in the main function. There's one in the void function up here known as my function, but that cannot be pulled from that function to this function. If you want to print up something for x, then you need to do something to create x in this function right here. So, as I said, if you try to print this, as you know, you get an error. X was not declared in the scope, which is what we're referring to, scopes, local and local scopes. So, since it's a local variable, it belongs to this local. It's a scope for this function right here, and it will not come to down here. Simple enough. Again, moving on to the next section, global scope. Okay, so we got a local scope and a global scope. Local scope being this right here, this being a local scope for this variable. And then we got a global scope. A variable created outside a function is called a global variable and belongs to the global scope. So let's first understand what a scope is. Does it really say what a scope is? No, I don't think so. Actually, it's so in C++, variables are only accessible in the region they are created. So in the region that they are created. So the region is called the scope. So if it's created inside this region of this function right here, that's a scope. If it's created inside this function right here, this region of this function, then it's belongs to this, it's a scope in this function, I guess. I'm trying to use that word the best I possibly can. I may be misusing it, but so a variable created outside of a function is called a global scope. It belongs to the global scope. The thing about it is they're using global and local to better determine it. So instead of just saying this, it belongs to this scope, it belongs in, it's a local scope for this function. Or it would be a local scope for this function if it was in here. A global scope then. Global variables are available from within any scope, global or local. And then they got an example right here. So we're going to have to rewrite our code just a little bit. I'm going to start up here, make a comment that they got here, global variable x. I'm going to add something else to this. So it's a global variable x. This is also, from my understanding, the global region, as I used it up here, where anything created in here would be a local region of this function. This is kind of helping me to understand it too a little bit better. Same thing with this one right here. This would be the local region of this function. Okay, so anything outside a function, apparently, whether it's the main or a created one, you create yourself, a user created function, is known as a local region or a global region. Again, the compiler reads things from top to bottom. So if you created a variable down here, even though it's still global, it would only work for anything below this point right here. As the compiler, let me go ahead and mark this down here. This is also global. Yeah, I didn't think I was spelling that right. Global region, but is only usable to code below this point. I'll put that on another line here. Below this point. And the reason that is because when the compiler starts, and I'll put this up here as well. Compiler starts reading. I'm going to say reading. I don't know if it's exactly reading or not, but reading the code from this point down. The compiler ends down here. Okay, so the compiler starts reading code from this point. It goes down and it ends right here. This is what we've learned so far, or what we've discovered so far. So if we create a, this would be global region for anything from here down. If we create a global variable x right here, it can be used from any point from here down. This would be a global region for everything from here down, so we had code down here and stuff, and anything from here down would be part of that global region. So if we create another variable down here, it can only be accessed from this point down. So, for example, and I'm not even going to comment this out, int x10 right there. What is this? Oh, ha. Let me write that properly. X. Talk about bad dyslexia, huh? Go ahead and save that the way it is. Okay, so that's fine. So since this is created on here, this can only be used from this point down, as the compiler won't see it until it gets to that point. Now in this example right here, they continue with this comment by creating another one. Int x is 5. And then close that off right there. Oops. In that statement right there. So x actually gets switched down here, and we can actually change this to, instead of doing that, since we've got it already declared, we can just go ahead and change it to there. Actually, no, I guess we can't. What does that say? I'm just curious. This declaration has no storage class or type specifier. Error type X, global region, but it's only usable. Okay, so it says. Okay, so we do need to clear it down here, I guess. We'll see what happens. Part of the learning process, I guess, is experimenting, playing around with it, getting used to it. Um, okay, so there is our example right there. We are going to go ahead and clear all this out right here because we no longer need this. You've seen it now. I'm going to create a new comment right here. We can use X here. In fact, I'm going to change this to Y. There. And this right here is going to be changed so we can output X here. Yeah, I wasn't supposed to do that, but so X is declared right here. This is part of the global scope. Global scope, um, a variable created outside of a function is called a global scope and belongs to the global scope. Global variables are variables from within any scope, global or local. Okay, so since this is declared right here, this is actually part of the entire program, not just inside this function, not just inside this function. It's part of the entire program right here. So anytime, anywhere in your program, 10,000 lines down, if you use X, it can end up referring to this right here. Let's keep moving on and continue with this. So we got that one done. We don't need this comment anymore. We do need that right there. We don't need this comment anymore. It changes to we can also use X here. And then we call out X again right there. So let's go ahead and save that right there. So now we got X declared up here in a global scope outside of any function. We can use the function right here, my function, the void function, to call out what X is, which would be 5. We can use it also right here. So we should get, in fact, using this code right here, we should get X printed twice. I'm going to add a little bit here. Standard, I don't think this will work, and it really shouldn't, as far as I know, as far as I understand. But yes, we can call out Y right here as well. We're going to end up running into a problem trying to do this one right here because Y is afterwards, and if I'm not mistaken, Y, since Y is down farther, will not have a variable, will not have a value to it, and should actually create an error. Got it saved. Let's go and run it and let's see what happens. Yes, Y has an error because Y is not declared in this scope. It is declared after that, showing you that the compiler goes from top to bottom. And since we ran Y right here, even though this is in a global scope, it's after the code, and the compiler has no idea on what Y is since it hasn't seen it yet. It's like, well, compiler, it's back there. Well, I've already passed that point, sort of thing. Or it's up there. Well, I haven't got there yet. Yeah, so sort of thing, I guess. Best way I can explain it. So I'm going to get rid of that code right there. We should have X that prints up twice as 5. One from a local, I didn't save it, sorry. Save it. Clear it, run it. X prints up 5 twice. One for the void function and one for the main function. So we call it right here. It goes up here, it prints it out, and then we output it right here as well. So we get 5 twice. Even though 5 is not in either one of these local scopes, it's on the global scope, so it can be used anywhere from this point on. Let's keep going forward with this. There is something I want to mention about that that can get quite confusing and stuff in larger programs, so we haven't got to that point yet, but that's that example. Naming variables, if you operate with the same variable name inside and outside of a function, C++ will treat them as 2 separate variables. The one available in the global scope outside the function, and one available in the local scope inside the function. Now we got another example. In this example, the function will print the local X, and then the code will print the global X. in this example here. So let's clear out this terminal right here. We understand this now, so let's go ahead and get rid of all that. We'll come back up here. We understand all this, so we'll get rid of all this comment right here. They do still have a comment there, but I'm going to leave it out. I'll leave the statement in right there. In this function right here, they have a new comment, so I'll go ahead and put that new comment there. Local variable with the same name as the global. Go down to the next line here. Variable. Oops. X. There we go. So this is going to be int x is 22. Wrong symbol. Still wrong symbol. Okay, and then we got this one right here, which we're going to change this comment to this one right here. Refers to the global variable x. And save that. Okay, so we have the global variable, which can be used anywhere. We declare the same variable with a different value inside this one. So this one's global, this one is local. This one right here, the local ones take priority over global ones, so this one will print 22 when we call this function. Since there is no local one here, this one's still going to print the global one, 5. So we've already saved it. Let's go and run it, and we should have 22 and 5. Yep, 22 and 5. This one uses on the local one because it takes priority over the global one. Let's keep moving forward. Now we got that example done. However, you should avoid using the same variable name for both globally and locally. I don't know why it says that. You should avoid using the same variable name for both globally and locally variables. Global and local variables, in my opinion, is how it should be said, as it can lead to errors and confusion. Yeah, in my opinion, it should say, however, you should avoid using the same variable name for both global and local variables, as it can lead to errors and confusion. Yes, and it can. First of all, the confusion would be the part where somebody's reading this and somebody else is reading your code and stuff. You know that it does this and stuff, but there's no guarantee it's going to do it properly every time. But somebody else reads it and stuff and says, okay, X is 5. Okay, now X is 22. So which one is it going to use? Because I'm not familiar with this right here. But if they know C++, they should realize and stuff that this local ones take priority, but still don't use the same variable name. In fact, we can rename this one right here very easily, GX, global variable X, and LX, local variable X. And then just put the L right there with that, and put the G right there with that. And that just explains everything right there. This one's going to use a local variable. This one's going to use a global variable. You can come up with plenty of names you don't have. I mean, it's happened before, I'm sure, but you can come up with plenty enough names and stuff to be able to rename one thing over another thing. So, in general, and just a rule of thumb. But we've already discussed that and stuff. When you have a value and stuff, you need to use the variable name to describe what the value is being used for. In general, you should be careful with global variables since they can be accessed and modified from any location. And I got another example. Okay, and I'm glad that they're doing this. Actually, they're not doing it. They're not doing what I was thinking that they were going to do. But let's go ahead and do this right here. They've still got this right here. We're going to go ahead and take off that G right there. Take off the L. Take out the L. Take out the G right here. We're going to change this so that get rid of all this right here. They got a new comment right here. Increment the value of x by 1 and print it. Okay, so, and then we got the output, standard output, plus x, new line there. So that one's finished. And then in the main, we're still calling it. This one right here still prints the global one. And then I got another comment down here. The value of x is now 6, no longer 5. So new comment down here. The value of x is now 6, no longer 5. And then save it, run it. So this right here is going to refer to this right here. The downside about this, and this is what they're referring to, okay? This should actually print up 6 in both places because we're changing 6. We're changing x right here. Even though it's part of the global and stuff, when we change it right here, it still changes up here, so this one becomes 6 as well. So we should print up 6 twice because of us changing that global variable to 6. So it should print 6 twice, and it does. So even though you want it to print 6 right here in this function, but you still want it to print 5 in this function, it's not going to work that way, and this is why. This is why it's a bad idea to use global variables. It's okay if you, I mean, in a sense, there's some cases and stuff where yes, you need to, but having a specific name for it helps out. They did it this way. I mean, you could also do it this way to where in this case right here, x is 20. So now we've just changed the value of x right here to 20 and stuff. So any more code that we write after this point in time, if we use the variable x, it's going to be 20. For this right here, since it's after the function call, it's going to be 6. And then we're going to change it to 20. So now this right here no longer actually exists. This right here is useless up here because 5 is no longer correct. We would actually have to write code if we want to use this again, either above the main if we want it to be 6, or above this function right here if we want it to remain 5. So even if we had another function right here, void, I'm not sure if this will work either. New globe. We'll just say new x is what we're going to call this. And yeah, so we very much have to write a new function right here and stuff just to get the original value of x. And where this can be difficult is if you end up declaring something we've done in the past. So you end up declaring a variable right here, and you want input. Well, you're using this function right here to increment. Well, but you want to use this variable again that you just got input from somebody for something else. So what's your favorite number? We'll have that in the main right here. In order for that favorite number to stay the same, you would have to localize it. But if we ask a question and then get input, favorite number is 6. So now we output the 6. That's what the favorite number is. We use this right here to increment the x value up here. When that happens, we have then lost the user's input data because x is no longer the user's data, it's our data at that point in time. That can be quite confusing, but maybe we'll have more examples of doing that later on, so that would make more sense. But anyways, you kind of get the idea. Using global and stuff, it's useful. It has its uses, but it's not guaranteed. you can get undefined behavior doing that. All right, moving on from there, we got that done. Conclusion. To sum up, use local variables with good variable names, such as much as you can. This will make your code easier to maintain and better to understand. However, you may find global variables. You may find global variables when working on existing C++ programs or while collaborating with others. Therefore, it's a good understanding on how the global. Okay, so if you there's an old program out there and you get joined up with a team to help with whatever and stuff, and because of the original C or old program from C++, they declared their variables in a global scope in this sense. Okay, so we know that this is right here, so we got to be careful about writing our code now, because if we use this right here variable, we can end up changing the global scope of that variable for the entire program, which can create problems. But you know about it, you know that there's a such thing as a local, a global, and the fact that it can be changed. So that's useful. All right, so that's pretty much it on uh, this section, which is basically scope, understanding scope. Variable scopes, whether it's local, whether it's global, whether you're changing it, whether you're not. Just I I haven't written any big programs yet at all. I've barely written any programs at all, period. So I have never had to use for needing to put up a global variable. Um, so maybe in the future I might, but right now, and I may, when I start writing a program, I'm probably definitely going to have to go back through a lot of my source material to understand how to do what I'm wanting it to do. Just because I'm going to continuously kind of slightly forget. Hopefully, more stuff over time ends up becoming solidified in my memory. But as of right now, yeah, I'm still working on learning and understanding all this stuff. When we come back with our next video, since this one's already 30 minutes long on just scope alone, we'll go to recursion, which I'm not familiar with that. I can't remember what that is, if I even learned it at all. And that's where we'll pick up with our next video. So. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click the like button. If there's something I said that was wrong, leave it in the comments. Let me know, let everybody else know and stuff. I can't say I'm going to make a correction to it, but hopefully I'll learn from it. If you have any questions, I can try to answer them, but I'm still learning this stuff myself. Maybe somebody else can answer it. If you have any comments, it's perfectly fine. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will catch you next time.